Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted as always to be joined by Danny on this fine Friday night in October. We have just seen George LIDDARD defeat Kieron Conway by stoppage to become British middleweight champion at only the age of 23. Danny, thank you for joining me as always. Good to speak to you. Give us your thoughts on the fight, please. I think this was billed as a 50-50, wasn't it? By the bookies and experts in the industry. But looked like fairly dominant from George Liddell. What did you make of it all?
Yeah, it was a dominant performance from George Lillard. He started fast, which I think even people who thought Conway might win the fight would have considered that George Lillard was likely to make a brighter start. He made a very good start, landed a lot of clean shots on Conway, who never really seemed hurt at any stage in those early rounds, but certainly was maybe a bit taken aback by the speed of Lillard. I think obviously the hand injury slash shoulder injury, we don't really know what it
Mm.
was that happened around the eighth round, was a key moment in the fight. And shame because just around that stage, not that Kieran Conway had won any rounds massively, but it looked like he was starting to creep back into the fight. I think that's where people thought he would have some success dragging Leonard into deep waters late. Done well to last as long as he did with only one hand and one arm. I thought maybe there was a case to be made he should have been pulled out. I don't think his body language was great in the corner between the rounds after the injury. Didn't respond to questions about how he was and the injury, like a fighter who particularly wanted to continue. But gamely tried on, but given how the fight had been going when he had two working hands, it didn't come as too much of a surprise when George Leonard was able to force the issue and give the corner no real choice but to throw the towel in. It would have been a very pointless exercise keeping him in any longer.
Yeah, it kind of like felt like it would have been cruel for the fight to continue when it didn't need to when we all knew who was going to win. George, look, it's impressive. Look, this was George Liddell's 13th fight tonight. Only 23 years old. Hasn't kind of has maybe fought people of Southern area, maybe even English level, but hasn't actually fought for those belts. So to go straight into a British title and win by stoppage is really impressive stuff. I need to ask you, Danny, how can this guy go far? Do you think? I'm not gonna kind of kind of ask if you think he's the second coming of Roy Jones Jr. or anything crazy like that, but is this guy destined for big things? Is he one of Britain's biggest prospects?
He's ticking all the boxes so far. I don't know if you can call him a prospect with a British title. Kieran Conway, we've seen sort of soft touches for British titles. Kieran Conway certainly not one of them. Only lost to very good fighters. Give good accounts of himself against the likes of Ame Williams and Suleiman Suzuki, who are unanimously considered world level fighters. And George Lillard's done a better job than all of them, even before the injury, really. So at 23, 24 years of age, is he? In what is a fairly weak middleweight division. I think he'd be very disappointed now if he didn't go on to win a world title. I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to dominate the division. We've
Yeah.
yet to see who's going to come through alongside him. But with a British title at 23, with a big promoter backing you and coming off one like that, they'll be, very, very strong in their opinion that he can go on to win a world title. He hasn't really put a foot wrong yet, been dispatching the fighters with relative ease, and that was a career best performance tonight.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I can't help but think of last weekend where we saw Junaid Bostan lose, arguably the second time in a row to Bilal Fawaz. So you've had two matchroom prospects. One of them's lost, and then one of them's kind of won. One of them's won and won in very impressive fashion. I just feel like there's going to be maybe more emphasis from Eddie Hearn and Frank Smith on George Liddard, not just because he's won tonight and Junaid Bostan's lost last weekend, but the fashion in which he's won. It's going to be really interesting to see what he does next. Which brings me on to my next question, Danny. Do you think he'll defend this title? Do you think he could maybe try and fight for a European title? Do you think he could try and just kind of get fight in some sort of eliminator? What do you think George Liddell's going to do next? Still only 23.
Yeah, exactly. There's no great tearing rush to fast track him towards a world title. I'd like to see him maybe try and win the Lonsdale belt outright. There's interesting matchups for him there. I'd like to see the Aston Brown fight, who's, of course, as we know, making waves north of the border. Not sure who has the European, but given the state of the middleweight division, I'd probably back George Lennard to beat him, whoever they are. But as I say, there's no great rush at 23. Why get it wrong now? We're still yet to see him go 12 rounds. Try and tick that box and see the lay of the land maybe in a year, 18 months' time. I can't imagine Yanabek's going to hang about a middleweight too much longer. He's had some struggles making the weight. Maybe after his unification fight with Lara, he'll move up and those belts become vacant. And then once you've had a 12 round fight, which you maybe made a defense of that British title, and as you say, picked up a European, then you go for world honours and maybe fights that will build his profile a bit. We're obviously lacking stars coming through in the UK commercially. Someone like a Tyler Denny or a Nathan Heaney, I don't know how much its fight against George Liddard would appeal to either of them, but if you can get them in the ring, those are the sort of fights that'll grow George Liddard's profile as well as his abilities as a fighter.
Yeah, no, I'll touch on two names you mentioned there. Aston Brown. I interviewed Aston Brown for his last fight. He assured me he was going to be at York Hall tonight, and he wasn't. So that's disappointing. I think kind of having
Oh,
a
am I going to say something to
Oh,
him?
let's not go too far. I think, yeah, I think I can imagine. You can imagine Aston Brown, trying to get over the security barrier and trying to get into the ring and really kind of put it on George Liddard tonight. But that's not happened. He watched the fight at home, which was a shame. That was the evening I was looking forward to the most. Tyler Denny, I think, is a good shout from yourself as well. Tyler Denny wants a fight, doesn't he? Got no idea when he's next. No idea when he's next fighting. He's obviously in the midst of this messy boxer situation, so it's all gone quite quiet from here. So those are the two names you picked out, which I would really like to see. Aston Brown for me is someone who just looks quite dangerous and someone who is maybe just in a bit of a rush considering his age. So that would be a great fight for me. Final question before I let you go, Danny. We always talk here about kind of pay-per-view stars of the future. And kind of who's going to be kind of the future of British boxing with the likes of Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Chris Eubank Jr., kind of in the grand stage of their career. Do you think George Liddard, do you think he kind of has the look and the personality of someone who can be a pay-per-view fighter? Because it's about that as well. Like there's a reason why Anthony Joshua, Chris Eubank Jr. are pay-per-view fighters. It's not just because of fighting ability. Their box office is kind of as people. Do you see that in George Liddard, or do you kind of do you think that's going too far?
Well, based on recent events, my perception of what a pay-per-view fighter is clearly completely wrong. So I don't know how much weight this opinion has. Um, I don't know. Like he has got a bit of personality. He was quite brash in the build up to this fight, wasn't he? Which is the sort of thing that gets clicks and gets eyeballs in this generation. He's a very good fighter. He's probably better than Chris Eubank Jr. was at that stage, definitely, and he'll have aspirations of achieving more. But it's so difficult now. Like we've spoke about it off camera and in group chats about the lack of crossover appeal in boxing. And not being disrespectful, George Liddard's a very good fighter, but I don't think he's going to be the one to bring the football fans and bring the casual fans. And I think he sold a good few hundred tickets tonight at York Hall. But like if we're talking about football stadiums and pay-per-views here. And another thing, I don't know who the dance partner would be, the natural rivalry. We've talked about how stagnant the middleweight division is. I know obviously Jimmy Sains tonight there, stablemate, maybe that could be an all Essex
Mhm.
rivalry, although don't know if that's feasible, but I don't know, to be honest, if you ask me about pay-per-views and all the rest of it.
It's a big ask, doesn't it? I think he needs to have the right dance partners, both domestically and internationally as well. And yeah, I just think the hope for me with the middleweight division is that you get the big names at 154 moving up, whether it be Jaron Ennis, Sebastian Fundora. That's what you hope to see, and that's how kind of maybe some big fights can happen in the middleweight division. But we'll see. As we keep saying, only 23 years old, but really impressive stuff from George Liddard tonight. Danny, thank you for your time as always. I will speak to you again very soon.
Thanks, mate.